Now this might be a random add to the channel, but today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a DIY editing NAS that can handle 8K raw footage. And what's more, this thing is not only going to be on par with a NAS that's double, almost triple the price, it actually far exceeds it in its raw components and its capability. Does that sound too good to be true? Well, not exactly. See, the Synology is the NAS I'm comparing our DIY NAS to, which is almost triple the price. And it's not to knock Synology. It's an amazing consumer brand that if you have the money and you don't have the time, you throw it at Synology and you'll get pretty much what you're looking for. However, given the fact that I'm big into DIY, and it just really pained me when I saw the component list of the Synology to put that much money down for something that's just so underpowered, I decided to pick up my machete and traverse the uncharted jungle that is editing NASes. The first item on the list is the Huananzhi F8D X99 motherboard. The real reason why I'm using this is because I got this thing for an absolute steal from one of my friends who had one and he just didn't really need it anymore. But I'm quite pleased with it, and the more I look into it, the more I find that this thing really is one of the best values for the money you can get for a NAS that has like a high power ceiling. The reason why you really want to go with the dual CPU, 2 CPUs doubles the amount of RAM. And that's really important for an editing NAS. In order to get really blazing fast read speeds, the more RAM you have, the better. Next, you want to pick up some Xeon 2680 CPUs, 2 of them, and as you can see from the price, they're pretty crazy. The kind of RAM you need is DDR4, I would go with 32 gigabyte sticks, 2133 RECC server RAM. Now this RAM cannot be used in regular desktop PCs, nor would you really want to, given in fact how old these are. But for our purposes, this is really fantastic because RECC basically means that your RAM will check with your hard drives and make sure that they're synced up, and that stops bad sectors or write errors, things like that. Absolutely fantastic. If you got the money, go with 8 sticks because 256, but honestly, you'll get by with 128 just fine with this current build. In fact, my friend got by with 64. I'm going to be testing the actual overall power consumption by this NAS as soon as my wattage meter comes, but given ChatGPT's pretty accurate results in the past, it looks like around from 600 to 800 watts, so just go for a 750 I think is right. Somehow, you might be able to talk to the manufacturer, as they told me they could do special combo deals for you. I didn't have any luck because I couldn't seem to understand what I was talking about, but just try. What's the worst thing that can happen? However, if you can't, you're going to want to get 2 of these coolers. Now, it doesn't have to be from the manufacturer. It is the Intel LGA 1156. You can find any cooler that will do that. I just find it easier to go with the manufacturers because I just know nothing's going to be, incorrect with the motherboard. Now, this is really important, and I had to order a couple cards before I found the right one. You want to get a 10 gigabyte PCIe card, but not all of them work. Specifically for TrueNas, you want to get one that's driverless. I don't know all there is to know about it, but I know this one right here works, and it works great. So just get this one. Now, if you follow my guide exactly, you'll basically need to know nothing about a NAS and how it works. But for anyone who does care to know, one of the ways in which we're getting such awesome write and read speeds is by using a cache system that you can do in TrueNas. Now, for what's called the SLOG and the log, don't worry about what they are, but you do need them if you want good write speeds. You're going to want to get smaller SATA drives, even as small as 8 gigabytes. But it's really hard to find such small and cheap SATA SSDs. You can find mSATA SSDs really cheap and right size, but then of course you have to find a way to plug them into your computer. To do that, we're actually going to use 2 things. One is these little mSATA to regular SATA converters. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and you can get some. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive. I'm going to go with these super cheap ones that have a fake little case. Kind of makes my life easier. And the second thing you're going to need is a PCIe SATA expansion card. You don't actually need this if you have 4 or less hard drives in this NAS, which I don't necessarily recommend. But if you have more than 4, you're going to need this because you simply won't have enough SATA ports for everything. If you don't have an old GPU lying around, go ahead and get a pretty darn cheap one. Anything that will just work, that's all you need. Just for your initial setup for the NAS, you're going to want to be able to see what you're doing. But once you're done setting up the NAS, I removed my card and just left the NAS without it because you don't need it. Definitely don't overlook this. You need to get yourself some Cat 7 Ethernet line. Cat 6 will work, but only in really short distances, and that's just a hassle I don't want to deal with. Just get some proper cordage. If you don't have some NVMe drives lying around, which if you're a video editor and you're switching to a NAS, you should definitely have some of these that have built up over the years. But if you don't, one that's 256 gigabytes for the actual operating system of the NAS, and then one that's something around 500 to a terabyte for what's called the L2 ARC cache. Don't worry about what it is, but you need it. And that's pretty much it, except for the last thing, which is completely up to your preference. You need to determine how much storage you actually need. Now, there's a few considerations without boring you with the details, but given the fact that we're using TrueNas, we're gonna have a RAID called Z1 or Z2. Z1 is if you have 4 hard drives, one of them being a sacrificial hard drive that you don't get to use that data, but it's kind of there just in case one of the drives fails. You can take that out and replace it with another drive, resilver it, and you haven't lost anything. I went with the Z2, which is 2 drives of parity, meaning 2 drives can fail before I lose all that data. Obviously, if one drive fails, you really want to get on replacing that one. However, the more hard drives you have in the pool that are striped, the faster your read and write speeds will be. 8 drives of 12 terabytes is 96 terabytes. However, I'm cutting off 2 of those for parity and safety, so I'm actually getting 72. Something else to think about is you shouldn't really go over 80% of your available pool. So let's cut that down to 57 usable terabytes in an 8 drive, 12 terabyte RAID Z2. I recommend if your footage is not mission critical and you don't need that much space, go with the RAID Z1 with 4 12 terabyte drives. One last thing, and I almost forgot about this, and that is the actual case itself. I have the Fractal Meshify 2, which works just great for this NAS. It's a big case, but it's very quiet, and of course it fits everything I need it to. And there we go, 16 items, one of them not in AliExpress, which comes up to a grand total of $1,720. Without the hard drives, it's around $660. Now, if we compare that to a Synology equivalent, you really start to see just how much we're saving. Now, mind you, this $4,339 price tag on the Synology isn't even comparable because the amount of power and room to add and increase we have with this NAS just blows the Synology out of the water. It's not even close. Oh yeah, this thing has 4 gigabytes of DDR4 ECC, and our current setup, 128. It's unbelievable. $140 for their 10 gigabit adapter. How much is ours? Oh yeah, 47. And it's got 2 ports. That does matter. Okay, so you bought everything, now what the heck do you do? Unfortunately, I am not gonna take mine apart and then show you putting it back together, so that's gonna be one thing you're on your own. But listen, if you ever built a computer before, it's the exact same. You put the motherboard in, and then you put all the parts on, and you put the power supply in, you plug it all in together, and then you turn it on. And hey, with all that money saved, what you could do is go find someone like me, throw them 200, 300 bucks and say, hey, build this for me. In fact, you probably can get someone like me to do the whole thing for 500 bucks and you still will be walking away with a better NAS and having saved yourself roughly $2,000. So just Google TrueNas scale, download. There you go. It'll take you to this page. You just click download stable. Once the download is done, you then want to go and Google Rufus. Click on the first link, which is going to be Rufus Create Bootable USB Drives the Easy Way. Never mind, Rufus didn't work. I don't really know what the problem is. I'm sure Rufus can do it, but I'm just gonna use what was recommended by TrueNas, which is Balenciaga Etcher. Click Flash from File and find your TrueNas Scale ISO. Select Target, find the 31 gigabyte Kingston Data Traveler, select that, and click Flash. That was a lot easier. Okay, eject that bad boy, plug it back into the server, restart. When you hear the beeping noise, press F7. There we go. Oh, look, we can actually see the boot up logo. Smash that F7 button. Let's try this again. Okay, so go down to UEFI, Kingston Data Traveler. So start TrueNas Scale installation. It should actually automatically do it in a few seconds, but we'll just speed that up by pressing enter. Okay, here's the menu. Click Install Upgrade. And then you want to find the disk you want to install this on and press spacebar and then enter. Press enter. Proceed with the installation. You will lose all partitions and data on the NVMe. It's okay. Definitely want to use the administrative user if you don't know what you're doing, so don't mess with that. Password, confirm password. We're just gonna go with 123 as the password. I would recommend something a little bit more complicated, but do write it down. Press tab, 123. You can press down, enter. I am not gonna create a swap, so click no swap. And then you're just gonna wait for the installation to finish. Okay, just follow the prompts on the screen. Go down here to reboot system, and whenever it's off, just unplug the USB. Now, before you boot up the NAS again after you install, you want to find a router, or if you already have a router, and plug your computer and your NAS into that router. If everything went okay in the install, then the NAS should automatically grab an IP with DCHP, and you should be able to connect, as we'll take a look right here. We see it says web user interface is available at 192.68.3.1.177. So we head over. Okay, so we're gonna head over to Google Chrome and type in 192.168.31.177. And voila, there we go. Now we're logged right into our NAS. Now, before we go further, because this is not the way that I'm gonna personally have my NAS configured. So if you're gonna set it up with your router, or you have some sort of router already to set this up with, then you can pause here and skip ahead. But if you wanna connect your NAS directly to your computer, like if your computer has a motherboard that has an extra 10G Ethernet port like mine does, then I'm just gonna connect my NAS directly to that, and it saves me the hassle of having to buy an Ethernet switcher that does 10G. First, go to your network connections, find the Ethernet port that is going to be plugged into the NAS, right-click, Properties, go down to Internet Protocol version 4, Properties, and see how it has automatic IP and DNS. So we want to not have that. So for the IP address, we're going to do one above what our NAS is, so 192.168.31.178. Subnet mask is automatically filled in. Leave it as that, 255.255.255.0. Now the default gateway is going to be the IP address of your NAS, so 192.168.31.177. That's the NAS's IP address. Preferred DNS, I actually don't know if you need this or not because we're not connecting to the internet, but 8.8.8.8. Alternate DNS server is going to be 8.8.4.4. There you go. Click OK, close out of that. All right, now we have to set up the NAS. In order to do that, we're going to go here to Configure Network Interface. So press 1. We're going to go down and find the one that's been filled out. That is the Ethernet port that comes from the PCIe 10G adapter. We're going to click Enter on this. We're going to go down to Description, and you can set a description. I'm going to set main comp. Something's wrong with TrueNas scale where it does that. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. Just maybe my graphics card, and it's really old inside that NAS. IPv4 DHCP, you want to click no, because that's like automatic IP address assignment. You want to set it statically. Then go down to aliases. This is your IP address. So we want to keep it the same, 192.168.31.177. We have to tell it what the subnet mask is. And there's a special nomenclature, thanks to ChatGPT, I know this now, /24. That's going to be the 255.255.255.0 that we set in the subnet mask on Windows. Now you're going to go down and click OK and save. And it says you have pending network interface changes. Press A to apply them. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then just go ahead and press Q to quit. We're not quite done yet. We want to go to number 2. We want to go down here to IPv4 gateway, and this is where we're going to set the IP address of our computer. So we're kind of crisscrossing them, right? 192.168.31.178. There we go. And you don't need the /24 for this one. Click OK. Name server 8.8.8.8. Name server 8.8.4.4. There you go. Save. It does seem like it's having a real hard time with my graphics card, but don't worry. As long as everything's okay, this should be the last time we ever have to mess with it. So what I'm going to do now is go unplug the Ethernet port from the router to the NAS, and I'm going to plug in my cord that goes from the NAS to the computer, the 10G cord. Okay, so now we're gonna refresh to make sure that we still can connect. And voila, we did it. Now for the username and password, you set a password before for administrator. So you type in admin and then the password you set, click login, and there you go. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. All right, so here we are met with our dashboard in TrueNas. All you have to do is go down here to create pool, and it will open up this. Now I already have a pool, so it's gonna be a little bit difficult, but go ahead and give it a name. We'll call this one testing. Now for the layout, remember we talked about RAID Z1 and RAID Z2. If you have 4 drives, use a RAID Z1. If you have 6 or more drives, use a RAID Z2. I don't recommend you using more than 8 drives for a RAID Z2 because that might be a little bit dangerous, as the more drives you add, the more potential failure you can have. Now, unfortunately, I only have 1 drive available, so it's gonna be a little bit hard for me to show you exactly how to do it, but honestly, it's super easy. You just click right here, click RAID Z2, and then you select your drive. Unfortunately, I only have 1 drive, so it won't even let me do a RAID Z2. I can do a stripe though. Of course, it's gonna give me a little warning saying, hey, stripes are really unsafe, because if 1 drive fails, the whole thing is lost. Then you're gonna click next. The log is gonna be what helps your write speeds basically, and that's the reason why we have those little mSATA 16 gigabyte drives. So you would select 2 of those and put them in a mirror. It's a good idea to have them mirrored because you could potentially lose data if those went down. The spare is pretty self-explanatory. If you have extra hard drives that you want as spares because you don't want to have to open up the case or something again, if a drive fails, you put it here, but honestly, I think that's really for advanced users. Just don't use the spare. Now the cache is what we have the extra NVMe drive for, the bigger one. This one doesn't need to be mirrored as there's no risk of lost data if that drive fails. Metadata, I don't really know what it is and you don't need it for our purposes. Deduplication, if you know what it is, you're probably not watching this video. And last but not least, you can click review and then create pool. Next, you want to go to datasets and click on your pool, click add dataset. Top right. Call this dataset whatever you want. We're going to call this one testing 2, and we actually spelled testing right. Isn't that fantastic? Oh, invalid format. Yeah, sorry, you can't have any spaces. There we go. All right, for dataset preset, if you're just going to be doing what I'm doing, which is sharing your files over to Windows so I can edit for them, you can just choose SMB and it will save you a couple extra steps. But if you want to do something more advanced with VMs and all sorts of different stuff, you can choose generic. And there we go. So now we have a dataset in our pool. Next thing we gotta do is we gotta make a user to access that data set for our Windows machine. Go over to Credentials, Local Users, and click Add. We're gonna call this one Testing Guy. Put in a password, 123, 123, and click Save. Now that we have our user, we're gonna go over to Shares. You can see it already has Testing 2 here as a share, so you actually just click Edit. We're gonna make sure we select the correct directory, which is gonna be testing 2. Default share parameters, click save. We're gonna now edit the ACL. So click right here to edit the ACL. This is where you have to add the user that you made. Now for me though, I'm just gonna add my real user, which is Dr. Quads, give permission to full, and type to allowed. Click save, and there you go. Now you just type in / 192.168.31.177, which is the IP of your NAS. Click enter and boom, you can see my original pool and here is testing SMB. We're gonna click on that and of course it's empty because we don't have anything in there. I believe you can only have 1 user at a time connected, which is why I didn't connect, which is why I connected Dr. Quads' user account and not the one that we created. But I'm sure there's a way to do it, just I don't know how to do it and I don't need to do it, so I'm not gonna really bother myself with it. Last but not least, right click it and click Map Network Drive, and that will make your life a lot easier. Click Connect using different credentials, click Finish, and then you're gonna need to type in your password. Remember the credentials if nobody else is using your computer and there's no reason to not. And voila, you can see right down here, you have your drive, and that's that. If you followed my instructions exactly, you're gonna have a NAS that can handle 8K raw editing workflows better than seemingly native, and let me show you how that's true. Okay, now here we have some footage that I shot for my movie. I had this saved in 2 places, one on the NAS and one on an NVMe drive. So now we're reading it right off of the NVMe drive that's in the system. And I wanna show you something that's pretty crazy. Let's go to the frame before when the lights turn on. There we go. Okay, here we go, one more time. You see that? You see that delay there? That's what I've been editing all this time, and you just kind of get used to it, but you do feel it because editing has to be snappy. It's like jazz, there's a rhythm to it, and that throws off the rhythm. Now check this out. We're gonna now right-click, change source folder, then we're gonna go to the mapped network drive. That's one of the reasons why you map the network drive so that other programs can see it. We're gonna go to cam footage, movie backup, day 1, open, change. So now it's reading it directly off the NAS. Check this out. So we're gonna go back to the frame right there and watch this. Look, what? It's just unbelievable, guys. 8K raw playing back smoothly. Look at this scrubbing thing. In fact, they're snapping on, so it's a little bit less smooth. There we go. Now that snapping's off, you can see I can completely scrub this timeline. Just unbelievable. I could not be happier because not only do I have the space now to film my movie in 8K RAW like I really wanted to, but also my data is safe and it seems to be even faster than the NVMe drive. I don't really know why that is, to be honest, because surely NVMe drives are much faster than a NAS. Although one of the reasons why I went with 10 gigabit Ethernet instead of like Thunderbolt or something, given the fact that it's just a DAS, it's not really in the network, it's just connected directly to my computer, is because I read in a couple places that the latency of Ethernet is much less than USB and the consistency is more robust. So that might be why we've seen the performance increase in DaVinci Resolve. Whatever, I'm not gonna question it. It just works and that's the way I like it. If this video helped you out, consider supporting me on Patreon. But regardless, I do hope that you get your NAS up and running and you do it for a lot cheaper than Synology. Not trying to knock Synology, but you know what? No, they suck. This is awesome.